General priority hierarchy in mixing overall phase.
Is that phase? I don't even know.
Oh,
if
is that about
phase.
phase?
I don't think it's about phase.
No. No, I don't. There's low end extension, subby, clean, the proper amount of it.
Well, so you've talked about this before. You're when you're setting up
competitive enough high end.
I think the question is, what do you do first? And you've answered this before. It's sort of like low end vocals, drums.
Yeah, today. Yeah, but today's on Keto's mix, the first thing I did was fuck with the synth.
Yeah. And also, you said it was a really good rough mix, so you were getting something that was pretty close.
Yeah, so I was messing with the synth and the chorus cool guitar lick that was happening. Like those are my favorite two things. And then I popped the Unfair Child on the vocal and started with the vocal. And I think I wound up doing the low end last, but I was doing it with the vocal. So I did like kick, bass, and vocal once I dialed in the chords and the vocal separately and that guitar thing. Then I soloed the bass, the kick, and the vocal. And I kind of got the bouncing quality of the low end to the vocal that I was wanting from that, because Keto and I kind of talked about that on the phone before we jumped in, and then I put those chords back in and really finessed them accordingly. But I hit the chord sound first. I mean, things are different every time.
That's dope. All right.
Yeah.
Let's see.
I just, whatever's grabbing your attention, whether it's a positive or a negative, right? So if something's getting in the way, attack that first. If something feels great and you want to see if you can make it even better and enhance it even more, go there. You know, like I don't always start with a problem. I tend to start with inspiration, right? So if something's jumping out at me in a good way, I want to be like, yo, what can I do to that? Like, just see. And if there's nothing you could do, you take it off, you know? Like I was going to jump in earlier on the mix today, discussing when we were talking about boosting and EQ and how I don't really do that. Like on the EQ on most of the sounds, if there's any EQ, it's like 1 to 3 reduction points, depending on if I'm trying to get something louder and I have to compensate for it getting louder. Like on the synth, I wanted the synth to poke a little more, so I just turned up the gain. It's like, okay, cool. Well, now that the gain's up, there's a little too much low mid in it, so let me do a dynamic EQ reduction in low mids. But that's just so I can get it louder, right? That's not. It's not because the sound had too much of it. It was because once I turned it up to get it to kind of fit in the same zone, I needed to reduce that. So just really minimal on moves and understanding why you're doing them. Just like have 50 EQ points in if you can't like make sense of why they're there by the end of the decision making.
Yeah, I've definitely seen that a lot in sessions I get where there's a whole lot of little EQ moves that are just,
and it just like sounds like they turn the volume down by doing all of it.
Yeah,
I see that when someone posts crazy EQ and you're like, there's 50 points and they're all down. I'm like, you could have just turned the volume down. It doesn't make sense when I see that, like someone flexing about how many EQ points they put in their Pro Q3. It's like
weird flex.
But it happens. Just turn the sound down and then find some character boost in it to embolden that thing you were going for. And, you know,
I found this a lot when I'm mixing as I'm producing, which is an interesting challenge in and of itself, but that I find myself boosting EQ, boosting, and then I'm sort of getting closer to the end of the process and I look back and I'm like, I just have an EQ which I've basically boosted all frequencies. So maybe I'll just take this off, turn it up,
turn the volume up.
And it turns out it always makes it, well, not always, almost always makes it a little bit cleaner. I mean, again, it gets back to the minimum that you can do, because it turns out that if you're boosting some high end and then I compress it and then I boost some mid range and I took something out and then all of a sudden I've got 3 different EQs and they're all kind of boosting all over the place, and then okay, let me just make a duplicate, let's see if I can simplify this quite a bit.
And again, that example, that's a great example because that exists. Maybe just try again. Maybe that wasn't the right way to do it and that was a late night and just try another approach.
And especially from the perspective, I mean, you know, as a mixer, you're not spending usually you're not spending multiple days, multiple times. You go back to a song a couple weeks later. That sort of thing doesn't happen as much to you as a producer. No. If any producer people watching, that happens all the time, where you work on a song and then you switch something up and you try a new production. All of a sudden, the song you've been playing with for a couple of months, you realize, like, why does this have 9 plugins on it? Well, it's because when we tracked the vocal, it was like this, but then I did this thing to try to make it fit in this production, then I added another thing, and all of a sudden you've got too much stuff on it. So let's see if I can go back and minimize the whole chain.
That makes sense in production world, and in mix world it can make sense, but I wind up seeing I usually have no more than 3 to 4 plugins on a track, unless it's some sort of effect that I'm trying to create, like a throw, maybe like a parallel processing chorus effect that maybe I want to like sweep around you and do something wild, and pretty minimal on effective processing these days, and just kind of getting to it.